guys, I'm Alora. I make jewelry and jewelry tutorials. Today is a tutorial video. I'm going to show you how to make beaded fringe earrings. In addition, I'm also going to show you what materials are really good to buy and how to read a pattern. Those two things will really help you improve the quality and the variety of the earrings that you'll be able to make in the future. For the materials, you're going to need beading thread, a beading needle, beads, obviously. I've got so many. I've got a lot more than this too. A pair of findings or earring wires, whatever you want to call them, jewelry pliers, and a pattern or an idea of what you want to make. For this video, I have given you a free pattern in the description, and it's to make these earrings. I dropped my needle on the floor. Now, before we move on, I just want to give you a little bit more information about the materials so that you can get some good advice about what quality and what brands to look for. For thread, I use Nemo brand beading thread size D. It's very strong but also soft and flowy because it's made of nylon. I've also tried this brand called Wildfire before, which is a bit heavier and more stiff. It's good for bracelets, but I didn't like it for earrings because the earrings really need to flow. Like you see how the fringe really flows all around. If your thread is too stiff, it won't really have that movement. Of course, you can try different things, but just make sure you're buying beading thread. The word beading is important. If you try to use another type of thread like sewing or something, it might be too weak and it could snap under the pressure of all the beads. For beading needles, I use DMC brand. This pack says size 10-12, so I guess that's what I use. Just make sure you're buying beading needles, again, the word beading, because if you try to use a needle that's too thick, if you try to force it through the beads, it can actually snap the bead into pieces. Since these needles are so tiny, they can be tricky to thread. So if you're worried about that, you could buy fish eye needles. They have this bendy opening, so they're really easy to thread. Now the beads. The most important part, I think, because they are the pretty colorful thing that you actually see in the earrings. I use Toho brand beads, size 11, and they are really consistent for the price. I think they're my favorite ones. If you want the best top quality beads, you could buy Miyuki Delica beads, which are these perfect little teeny, perfectly consistent tubes. You probably see them in a lot more professional beadwork. I do recommend strongly that you avoid cheap bulk beads like ones you might see in a store. They are super uneven. They tend to have like a wonky looking long bead here, a wide bead there. It's just not worth it to sort through them and get the even beads. You should really invest in a decent brand, and Toho really isn't that expensive. I can get most colors of it for maybe 85 cents a tube if I order them online. For the earring wire, feel free to choose whatever you like. For me, I personally don't like these little craft earring wires that have the ball and the coil. I just don't like them. And I found that these little lever backs were my favorite because they open in the back and they close so they won't fall off your ear. Again, just choose whatever really looks nice to you, because if you think about it and pick something that looks really nice, a good earring wire can actually elevate the whole earring and make the finished product look really good. The pliers are just to attach the earring wire, that's all. I've had this little cheap set since I was a kid, and I still love them. They work great. So if you just get any jewelry pliers that close flat like this, you will be fine. The pattern is what we'll go over next. You can make your own, but there's a lot of good stuff out there. People sell them online. I sell some on my Etsy, so I'm gonna go over one of mine. Again, the link is in the description. After we go through mine, you'll pretty much know how to maybe make your own or what kind of information you will look for if you get someone else's pattern. This first page of the pattern shows the whole earring, and I just separated the top and the fringe because those are the two different sections you'll be working on. Top first, then fringe. There won't actually be a gap between them in the finished earring. It's just there so you can see the two halves of the pattern. On this next page, I've blown up the top and labeled the rows. As you can see, we'll start at the bottom where it says row 1. And the reason the rows are labeled on different sides is that when you finish row 1, you start the next row on the other side because you're kind of working back and forth, back and forth. I also added the exact beads I used, including brands and color names, so you could go out and buy the same ones if you want. But I do mention that it's just a suggestion. You can of course change colors if you like. Maybe instead of purple and dark purple, you want to do blue and dark blue, something like that. The next page is the blown up image of the fringe, and I'll just point out that the fringes are also labeled at the top here. All right, and this last page has a lot of useful stuff. First is the legend showing which letter is which color. And this is where the letters really help because then we get to do row by row detailed instructions. So if we look at the first row of the top, it's telling you that row 1 is 11 purple beads. 11P means 11 purple beads. That's very simple for this pattern. You can see if you just looked at the pattern, it's like purple, purple, purple. But the purpose behind this is when you're doing a complicated pattern that's gonna make like a very elaborate image or design, it can be hard to keep track of counting the beads yourself. It might be like 1 here, 2 here, 3 there. So these instructions just do the counting for you. You can see in the fringe section, you'll start mixing colors for this earring. Each block of color is separated by a comma. So this means that when you're building fringe number 1, you'll use 30 purple, then 1 dark purple, then 10 white beads. So if I flip back to our picture patterns, you can see here's fringe number 1, starts with 30 purple, and yeesh, that would be annoying to count on the picture, all of those 30 beads. So it's just nice that the written instructions already counted for you. Or that's me, I guess. I made the instructions so I counted for you that there's 30 purple here. You're welcome. Let's prepare our space to start beading. I have this fuzzy background surface I'm working on, so if I spill beads onto it, they'll stay in place instead of rolling all over the place. In fact, some people work by just using this surface to store their beads. You can just pour them out and pick them up easily with your needle. It can be felt or maybe velvet, whatever you have available. I personally just use that as a surface, and then I pour my beads out into these little dishes, so then I can pick them up and move them closer or further away from me. I didn't include this stuff in the materials though, because you can just use whatever you have lying around the house really. So now we need to get our needle and thread ready. And you're probably wondering, how much thread do I need? I'm gonna tell you right now, don't expect to finish your whole earring with just one piece of thread. You will need to change it halfway through. The reason for this is that when you pull out the thread super duper long, it gets tangled all the time when you're pulling it through the beads. So I always just pull out a length that feels comfortable to me, and then I will change it halfway through. It might be a little bit shorter than my wingspan or about the length of my wingspan. When the thread needs to be changed, I will show you how. Now you gotta thread the needle. If you have one like mine that's a little trickier to thread, here's my strategy. I hold the thread tightly between my thumb and forefinger. I pull it back until you can barely see the thread, just a little bit of it peeking out. Then I bring the whole of the needle towards the thread until it's touching my fingers, and I push it over the thread. So my fingers are really guiding the needle to the thread rather than bringing the thread to the needle. Now it's time to make the earrings. You always start with row 1 of the top piece. If you check the pattern, it says start here. Pick up your first 2 beads, which is 2 purple. Now pull the thread through and leave a tail at the end. By tail, I mean a bit of thread behind the beads so they don't fall off super easily. I'm gonna pause for a moment. Let's get ourselves oriented. So I'm holding the beads between my thumb and forefinger of my non-dominant hand. For me, that's my left hand. And my needle is in my right hand. I also have 2 bits of thread coming out of these beads. Down here is the tail. Remember the bit of extra thread at the bottom. Up on top, that is what I'm going to call the working thread. That is the thread that the needle is attached to. I'm going to refer back to that later. Separate the two beads just a little bit, still holding them. Then bring the needle behind the two beads. This is where the tail is emerging from, and bring it through just one bead. Pull through to tighten, and you're looking for the beads to just sort of sit next to each other like this. Next, if you look at where your working thread is coming from on the top, go right next door to the bead next to it and bring your needle through. Now I know the beads want to slide apart a little bit here, but just hold on to them and you'll be able to tighten a bit more as you go. Now you can pick up your next bead, just one bead this time, and bring your needle around to the other side of the bead where your working thread is already coming out of. So you're kind of making a little circle with your thread. Pull it tight, which brings the bead into position. And again, see where your working thread is coming out of and hop next door to the new bead. Now that is what you're going to be repeating to finish this row 1. Pick up one bead, make a circle around your current bead, then hop next door to the new bead. I'll speed up my video a little bit, so don't worry about keeping up with me. While I finish this row, just let me mention that it's okay if your beads are a little bit loose if you've never done this before. The way I'm making these beads right now, I'm trying to show it to the camera. If I was just doing it on my own, I might have my thumb on top of it more because I'm holding tight to my beadwork while I add new beads. Every now and then I have to adjust and tighten the thread. That is something that I do have practice in, so if you're having trouble holding onto the beads, tightening them, keeping them even, that is totally normal. This might be something you want to practice. You might want to start over again. That is totally fine. And even with my beadwork, there's a little bit of loose thread. You can see maybe it's a bit uneven here and there, but it will still even out a bit after I do the rest of the top and add the fringe to it, so you don't have to worry about it looking perfect right now. All right, now that we've finished row 1, take a look at the top of the beads, which I mean, these are where the holes are, and this is where your working thread is coming out of. You can see the thread intersects between the beads. Pick up 2 beads, then look at the second bump of thread from the working thread. Bring your needle through that bump of thread and pull through. Now bring your needle through that one bead which is closest to your working thread and that bump of thread. Now bring your needle through the other bead, and while you're going down, also go through that little loop of thread below it. And next, go back again to the other bead. Bring your needle through it. All right, now I will review this one more time. So let's just continue this row for now. Now pick up the next one bead, bring your needle through the next bump of thread, then through the bead. There, now that's what you will keep doing. One bead, next thread, and through the bead. That is the basic technique. You can just keep repeating. Go on and continue the row. This technique is called brick stitch. I'm just teaching you how to make a triangle with brick stitch. There are other shapes you can make with it. Maybe I'll go over more about it in another video. So now that we're at the next row again, I'm on row 3 I'm gonna start. I'll just give you a quick review of how to start that new row. Remember, to start a new row, you pick up 2 beads. Through the second bump of thread, go through the nearest bead, then through the other bead and its bump of thread, then back up through the other bead. And continuing on with 1 bead, next bump of thread, up the bead, and keep on going. For the sake of the video, I am just going to cut through the rest of the top. I don't want to just speed through it because it does take a little longer. All you have to do is just continue what I've taught you, how to start each new row with 2 beads and then fill in the rest of the row with 1 bead at a time. Once you get to the top 3 beads, we're going to make the loop. Pick up 4 beads for the loop. This is for dark purple in this case. Remember, that is written in the pattern which color it will be. Now go over to the bead on the opposite side of this final row and bring your needle through that bead. Now, I want to go through this loop again with my thread because that will make it stronger. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to navigate my needle through a couple beads, and then I'm going to make sort of a little loop and retrace my steps. So you see I'm sort of going to the next door bead and going back up where I came from. This is not like a super strict, you have to go to the exact beads where I did. You can just sort of try to navigate your thread through some beads to get to where you want to go. And see, I'm ending up back in the loop. Now that I've gone through the loop twice with thread, it will be a bit stronger and it can hold on to the earring wire a little better. Next thing I'm going to do is bring my needle down through all the beads on the side of the triangle. I'm trying to get to the bottom so I can start building the fringe over there. Also, I'm sorry I use confusing terms like top and bottom when I totally have the triangle flipped over. I guess I kind of assemble the triangle upside down because you work up the triangle, but I want to work towards myself. Sorry about that. But now I'm going to pin it in place, just so the camera can see everything. If I'm beading off camera, I usually just hold the earring in my hands instead of pinning it down, but you can try either way. Okay, also I realized that I flipped over my beadwork, so actually now the tail is here and the working thread is here. Anyway, now to build the fringe. Now we look at our pattern, that's fringe 1, pick up 30 purple, 1 dark purple, and 10 white beads. You're going to want to slide them up to the triangle just like I did. Now push aside the last bead on the fringe. You're going to skip that bead and bring your needle back up through the rest of the beads. I usually do this in a few sections. At the top of the fringe, make sure to also go back through that 1 bead at the bottom of the triangle. tighten the fringe a little bit, I usually hold the bottom bead while pulling the thread, but you don't want to pull too tight because you want the fringe to still be flowy, not stiff. Okay, now just hop next door to the next bead on the bottom of the triangle, and you can do the same thing there. Now building fringe 2, it's 32 purple, 1 dark purple, and 10 white. Skip the last bead, bring your needle through the rest of the beads, and the bead at the bottom of the triangle. Hop to the next bead and keep continuing. Again, I'm just gonna cut through the rest of my process. I'll show you what the fringes look like once they're all done together. All right, now actually, I have now run out of thread. I don't know if you have yet, but whenever you do, this is how you're going to get rid of the thread and replace it. So first, I'm just going to navigate through a few beads in the triangle part. Doesn't really have to be any particular beads, just try to go through some adjacent beads. Then I'm going to pick through in between sort of the intersection between beads, picking up sort of a thread in there and going through. What I'm doing is I'm gonna make a knot. Oh my god, knot around my pin. No, I didn't mean to do that. Whoops. Okay, I'm making a knot. All right, and then I will navigate my needle back through a few more beads. And cut it. So I didn't show it, but I did that to the tail that was still hanging out on the other side. And I'm going to add in my new thread to keep working. I'll start by just picking 3 beads to bring my thread through. I'm not gonna pull it all the way through. I'm gonna leave a little thread behind. Otherwise I might just accidentally pull it all the way through. And I'm going to make a knot again, just anywhere between 2 beads in the triangle. Pull that knot tight, and then navigate my needle back to where I know I want to start working again. So for us, that will be working our way back towards that next bead where a fringe will come from. And you can trim that little tail that you left behind. Easy peasy. And keep building your fringe. Remember to follow your pattern. Sometimes I go on autopilot, so maybe I would have accidentally skipped that white stripe in the middle. I would have just kept going purple, forgotten what I was doing. And now, since I showed you how to change strings, you know how to end this thing. You will just bring your thread back through some beads, tie a knot, and then through some other beads. There it is. Lastly, you're going to want to attach it to your earring wire. I'll show you a couple examples because you may have a different earring wire than me, but the basic idea with any of them is to open the loop at the bottom, put through your beaded loop, and close back the earring loop again. This is why you need pliers. You do need something that can open and close this thing very neatly. If you have more of a simple wire hook, then maybe it would look a little more like this. Again, opening it sideways and closing it sideways again. So once you're done with one earring, the next step is to make the other earring. And then you have your pair finished. So I hope that you enjoyed this tutorial. If you had some trouble following the steps, if you're a beginner, it's totally normal to have a little trouble learning the stitch. You could practice it more or do it again. But that's also why I included information about the materials and reading a pattern, because those things will take some of the guesswork out of learning how to do this. And then all you have to do is practice the actual skill. So if you like this video, let me know in the comments, because I'm just starting this out. This is a new channel. I want to make more tutorials. I also do some fun beading videos where I just make stuff that looks pretty. So again, let me know if you like the video, and I'll see you next week.